In this tutorial, I am going to show you how to make a little pumpkin for your fall decor. Now, these pumpkins were made with a stretch velvet, but I am going to use some Cuddle and Minky fabric for the pumpkins in this tutorial. So I have this scrap fabric that is mushrooms. It is either a Cuddle or Minky like fabric. I don't know if it's one of those brands. And then I have this pink fabric that is Cuddle fabric. And we're going to turn these two fabrics into some little pumpkins. The first step is to cut your fabric into a strip that is twice as long as it is wide. So this strip is 6 inches by 12 inches. And because we're going to be gathering and sewing, I didn't worry about everything being exactly perfect. And then here's a fun little tip. Use a lint roller when working with Cuddle or Minky fabric. That will help to keep the fabric from fraying. So Minky and Cuddle tend to have lots of these little fuzzy bits go everywhere. So if you have a little lint roller and you do this as you cut your fabrics, then you won't have fuzzy bits everywhere. My next step will be to place this with the right sides together, folding lengthwise. So I want to fold and match up the short sides. And I'm going to stitch about 1/2 inch along the short side, sewing the two short sides together. So I'm going to stitch this one, and I will do the same thing here. I will line that up and I will stitch here. So I have sewn my short ends together and it makes like a little tube here. My next step will be to create the gathered bottom. So I will use a 40 weight thread just because it's a little bit thicker and will be better at holding my gather together. And I'm not going to worry about knotting the end because the end is going to stay loose. It doesn't matter if your seam is open or closed and going to one side or the other. I usually have it open, just to have a little bit less bulk. So I will start my gather by going here and then here. That'll help hold those open. And when I pull, you'll see I don't pull it all the way through. I'm going to leave kind of a loose tail there. And my gather is about 1/2 inch from the edge. And I'm just doing a running stitch around the edge. So just big stitches going in and out. And then when I get close to that first stitch, I will pull my thread out or pull my needle off, and then I will take these two strings from each end of my gather, So you can see I stitched all the way around. Then I'm going to pull both of those threads, both those tails, and create this little gathered piece here. Then I will usually just tie a simple tie. So I just tie it once to help try to pull that. And then I will take one of these ends and I will wrap it around a few times to really hold that in place. And then I will again tie a knot. And then I will just trim off the ends of my threads. So I've made this little thing here, and I'm going to turn it right side out. And you can see my little bottom of my pumpkin there. Creates almost like a little bowl. Now my next step will be to stuff this. I'm just using some fiber fill stuffing, and I'm just going to stick it in my pumpkin. So it's going inside the little bowl that I made. And I'm going to need another 1/2 inch at the top. So I want to make sure I don't stuff it too full, that I can still get this stitched. Okay, so you can see when I'm really pushing, I've got about that much. I need a little bit more on these sides. So now I'm going to stitch the top of my pumpkin, and in order to do that, I'm actually going to use a thicker thread because we're going to have to pull a little bit harder. So I'm going to use a 12 weight thread. And again, I'm not going to worry about knotting the end, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just do a very large running stitch along the top edge, and I'm going to leave that tail loose. And it's about 1/2 inch from the top. Okay, so I've come back to the beginning there. And I'm going to go ahead and tie this because it'll help me with gathering and pulling that. And I'm going to just kind of gently, if you pull too tight, you might end up breaking your string. So don't pull too tight, but you want to push your stuffing down, and you also want to push that down so that it goes into the pumpkin like that. And just keep pulling and gathering and pushing. You're going to end up having a slightly visible hole there. That's okay. We're going to hide that in just a minute. So I'm going to again do a second knot to hold that all tight and in place. And what I will do now is I'm going to thread both of these. And then I'm going to push this through the center to help just tie off those ends. Having a really long needle for this part would help. Okay, so that just kind of helped pull that shut. And then I can tie my knot on the bottom. And if you want to go ahead and start smushing it so it's a little more pumpkin-y shaped and not, you know, toilet paper roll shaped, you can pull a little bit when you tie that knot. But again, don't pull too hard. You don't want to accidentally break your thread. All right, so we'll just cut that off. This is the bottom, so it doesn't really matter. It's not going to be very visible. Now, the next step is to create our little segments. So you can do a couple of things. You can use thread that is the same color to create your segments, or you can use thread that is in kind of a contrasting color to create your little segments that are gonna be the segments of your pumpkin. I am going to use my white thread. I am again using a 12 weight. It's a little bit thicker. It'll help create those little segments. So I have a really long piece of 12 weight thread, and I went ahead and tied a knot in this one, and I'm going to work from the top to the bottom. So I'm first going to stick my needle through the top, and then I want it to come out through the bottom. And a lot of times I will use my table to help push that needle. Now, when I create my segments, I'm actually going to create my segments going in a cross and then in an X. And my first segment is always going to kind of go over this seam that was made, because since that segment's already there, we're going to use it. And then again, I'm going to push through the top into the bottom. And you're going to pull just enough to kind of give that little pumpkin shape. And then the next segment I will go straight across. And then I will come this way. And then we will go this way. And just keep wrapping around. Now I've done my cross, so now I'll do my little X. Okay, so I have done all of my little segments, so you can see them here. And I have my string just kind of sticking out, so I will just kind of knot that off. All right, so I have my little pumpkin. His little segments are done. This is my top, so you can still see there's a bit of a hole there, and I'm just smushing it and fluffing it until it's the shape that I want. And now I need to add the stem. So I just have a little stick. So, and my glue gun. And all I'm going to do is just put a little dab of glue right there in that little hole, not a very big one. And then I will just put my stick in there. And smush him up just a little bit. So there you go. There's your cute little pumpkin made from your Cuddle or Minky scraps.